Hello, everybody. This is Zach at it again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I am here with Mr. Andrew Russell, and we saw actually just met each other at the showing of North by Northwest, the famous Alfred Hitchcock film that was showing at our newly renovated and restored Millwald Theater here in Wytheville. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, Zach, thanks for having me.
Your fiance and I have known each other many, many years. We're old schoolmates, Tina Repass, and was very happy to run into you and at the Millwald. Wasn't a lot of people there, unfortunately. I was hoping for a bigger turnout for that particular film, but North by Northwest is one of my favorites. How did you come about knowing that film or deciding to go see that show at the Millwald?
I would say it's been suggested to me by a number of people throughout the years, and it was on a list of films that I had at home that I just had been waiting for the right opportunity to watch.
Yep.
And actually, my grandmother, she always somehow said that she thought I looked like Cary Grant, although I totally he's much better looking than me. But she was always like, "Oh, you should see some of his other films." And so when she told me that, well, she was obsessed with kind of classic movies, so she was just fire hosing films before 1960 all day for the last 30 years or so. So she had a vast movie appetite. And so she was like, you should just watch some Cary Grant films to see his style. And so I watched a film called, I think it was called You're in the Navy Now, or In the Navy Now, where he plays a civilian engineer that gets conscripted as a warrant officer in the Navy during World War II. And he kind of runs this ship, and it was just kind of him clumsily finding his footing, finding his sea legs, I guess I should say, as he was kind of getting into his leadership position. I thought it was a great film. It kind of mirrored a lot of elements of my own engineering career, and so I kind of just loved seeing him on screen. And then I would also say that when I was living in the last place I lived, which is New York State, I had gone to a thrift store and purchased a 4 VHS box set of Alfred Hitchcock films, just totally whimsically. I'd never seen a Hitchcock film. And it was The 39 Steps, The Man Who Knew Too Much, The Lady Vanishes, and I'm forgetting the name of the fourth one. But me and my partner made an effort to watch all 4 of them and talk about them. And so I was pretty primed up on Cary Grant, and I had an appreciation for Alfred Hitchcock and his film style. And I think I was about ready. So I had wanted to watch it for a while, and of course we're trying to support the Millwald in every way we can, and so that found us at the door.
So you're an engineer by trade. That's very interesting.
Yep, that's what I had studied at school, and I worked as an engineer for about 6 years for a construction firm, and actually now I'm trying to be an electrician around here. That's what I've been getting into now. But
very cool. Well,
yeah.
We need plenty of them. Tell me, how did you find Wytheville?
I think it's a great town. I think it definitely feels like it's growing, and I think that it's got a lot of exciting stuff going on. And when you go to these street fairs and stuff, it's really I feel like it's really fighting above its weight class.
Right.
It feels like it's a college town almost on those big days, and I think that's kind of an amazing feat of how it's able to perform. And so I really liked it. We don't quite live in the town. We don't live in the town limits, but where we live at, I could ride my bicycle or walk into town if I had to.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, it's just paradise living out here, and I've just really enjoyed it. So.
Well, I would agree. I've lived here. How long have you been in Wythe County?
Since August.
Oh.
2022. So just a few months. Actually, a year at this point now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You're very new to the area. Well, I have lived here all of my 38 years and I would live nowhere else. There's nowhere else in the world that I would be accepted the way that I am or have the job opportunity that I do with the newspaper column, which you recognized me because of my work, which meant such a great deal to me. When we were introduced and you said, oh, you write for the paper, and that means a great deal. And I was happy to be there to write about North by Northwest. You obviously have an appreciation not only for Alfred Hitchcock, but for Cary Grant. What was it like seeing North by Northwest on the big screen?
I thought it was amazing. There were so many details that I just really wanted to get into about why I love the film. Let me just start a little bit by the other Hitchcock films I'd seen. So I'm going to blur my details between all of them kind of as I speak about it, and I don't want to pretend like I can review those ones solidly, but we really enjoyed seeing the box set of the Hitchcock films because they were just so incredibly fast-paced and witty and they were kind of presented in this extremely fast-paced style that like a film today isn't really made that way. I've seen some of them that are kind of like that. They're like that, like kind of like the director that did Hot Fuzz. I'm forgetting what his name was, but he paces everything so quickly that you kind of just like fall into jokes. But Hitchcock films are just super, like the dialogue is just so rapid. And when we watched those Hitchcock films, it was from his earlier career, and he was like, they were all recorded and directed in England, and other people were speaking British English. I know it's the same language, but I was having so much trouble, like on a VHS, trying to keep track of all this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what we were able to pull out of it was like so funny and rich, and the insults were hilariously clever, and I thought it was great. And then we started watching this one, and it was in American English, and I was like, I know it seems kind of petty, but I was like, oh, this is going to be like all the stuff that we loved about the Hitchcock film, but with like, you know, the accessibility of it being more digestible for our ears.
Exactly. I don't have to don't have to read the subtitles.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was looking forward to that for sure. And then as soon as the film started off in like true Hitchcock style, it was like extremely transit centered. You know, they're getting in and out of taxis, getting off in trains, getting on airplanes and stuff. And I just kind of love seeing those films because I just feel like they're kind of highlighting like the explosion of transportation at that point in like our American history or world industrialized history. And it's awesome to see because being on a train, like allows them so much more latitude in how they can interact with each other. So like they can go to dinner, they can like hide out on in a cubby room, or you know, be eavesdropping on other people. It adds so much dimension. And in the other Hitchcock films, the train was just so central because they're eavesdropping, the train comes to a stop, people are escaping. It's all the same kind of formula, and it's just fun to see it like in its absolute purest maturation. So we love that. And then on top of that, I mean, the first train ride that they were showing was the Hudson River, which is where I used to live in New York State. And so I used to ride that train line all the time, and I was just going crazy because I love that train ride. And it was featured in Breakfast at Tiffany's and a number of other films. And so it's a classic avenue to travel, and I used to live on it. So my nostalgia was going crazy. And so, I mean, that stuff, it captures me perfectly. So I was right there from the start.
Well, I'm a sucker for 1950s nostalgia. I'm a sucker for old movies, and I envy you your experience with the train. I've only ridden Amtrak once from Roanoke to D.C., and I absolutely loved it. It was really a dream come true because I watched all those movies and watched them have dinner and go back to their rooms, and living in the 50s is one of the most prosperous times in American history, and the food looks more appetizing, and my favorite television show is I Love Lucy, and to live as they lived in that era during the Hitchcock films or on I Love Lucy, it was just everything was an event. Men were dressed in suits, women wore hats and gloves. Everybody was elegant looking and classy, and everything was done with more class, right down to riding the train. And then you're talking about a suspense film being centered on the train. How many more, you have Strangers on a Train, you have Double Indemnity, you have Murder on the Orient Express. How many great films and great murder mysteries were centered on the train after that particular film, after North by Northwest? And, its title refers to, North by Northwest, the traveling and preferring train travel over plane travel and all that stuff, which was amazing. But something for me that I found quite humorous is even before the film started, they started having power surges. The lights were trying to dim, and they didn't dim all the way, and you couldn't tell if it was going to start or if they were having trouble or whatever. And I thought, oh, this is very Hitchcockian,
Yeah, exactly.
Is his spirit kind of here messing with us, because I went to Universal Studios in 1999, in the year 1999 and 2000, where they had a Hitchcock exhibit that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. But you could go to, like, they had one thing with a Bates Motel, like you were in the Bates Motel. They had a Bates Motel robe, and they had the Psycho House up on the hill. You could look into the binoculars to see if you could spot the killer on Rear Window, which is my favorite Hitchcock film.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that film. That does sound like a fun exhibit.
I would recommend it wholeheartedly. I hate that it's not there anymore. But
yeah, I guess I'll have to rely on your testimony. I did want to bounce back a little bit on and elaborate on something you had been saying.
Please do.
Two things. Number one, I got my eggs scrambled a little bit. I forgot it was Gary Cooper that was in the Navy Now movie, not the
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant, but same kind of actor, like the suave kind of whatever. And I got confused because they both kind of exuded a lot of like post-war elegance, I guess, in our cinema. And all I'm saying is that just kind of echoing what you were saying about people being in seats and stuff like that, and just how kind of amazing it was to see, and it was in color, you know what I mean? It really popped.
Yes.
And I actually learned recently that a lot of like transportation changes in our American culture, or I guess world culture, like changed a lot about wardrobe. Like if you look at people from the first half of the 20th century, they wore like greatcoats all the time, like stuff that went almost down to your knees.
Yep.
That fell out of favor when people had to start climbing in and out of taxi vehicles.
Right.
And it just was too much coat, you know what I mean? But when you're standing on a train or walking around the city or whatever, it's a much, it makes much more sense, And so just little changes like that. But I just thought it was great. And, it was, what I thought was really cool was seeing the lobby of the airport when they go to the airport in the film. That was like, in my mind, that was the earliest film representation of an airport, and just seeing how dramatically different it is from my experiences of like flying in and out of JFK or Newark or Dulles or whatever. It's just so different. There it was like a bus terminal basically by our standards.
Absolutely.
And so that was kind of fun to watch. And then the hotel lobbies too. They were just this incredible, majestic marble. And there still are some of those in the U.S., but like everywhere he walked into was just a really, like a palatial room where everyone was congregating and meeting. And I just thought that was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. hotel was a very elegant thing, and seeing that on the big screen for me, I'm a big Hitchcock fan, probably from going to that exhibit when I was 14. My mother, her favorite films are Hitchcock's, so every year on Hitchcock's birthday, my mom and I would stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning watching his movies, and I fell in love with Rear Window, The Birds, Psycho, and then you said North by Northwest comes along. My wife and I actually found that on YouTube, which of course has since been removed, but when we watched that, we were just blown away by that.
Oh, yeah.
And to have an opportunity to see that on the big screen was enormous for me. And like you said, it's in Technicolor, and it's almost, it may sound a little silly, but it almost felt like to me that I was in the picture. Like you could easily tell that was 70 years ago, but it looked so fresh and modern and in full Technicolor on that screen. You felt like you were in it with him.
Oh yeah, I can't even describe it. You put it exactly right. It's just, you felt like you were right in the scene almost. It just is so overwhelming.
And in no way did it feel like we were there for 2 hours and 16 minutes. I mean, it just went by so fast. And Hitchcock likes to poke. He has a very warped sense of humor, and he likes to poke fun at things, and you kind of get a chuckle when you see them kind of falling out of George Washington's nose as they're trying to climb Mount Rushmore to escape this killer, And
that's great.
And and this guy knows nothing of a life of espionage, yet he can dive perfectly underneath a truck before another truck hits it, and it's an oil tanker, so it blows it up. But he knows enough to get under that in just enough time so he's not hurt, but 2 other people die. It's just amazing how that clicks in to the slickness of those movies and the actors of that day, And,
for sure.
And Eva Marie Saint is actually still alive. Only one of the principal cast to still be alive, 99 years old. And another one that I noticed, the man who played the professor, the lead agent, Leo G. Carroll. He was in a lot of early Hitchcock films, Spellbound and all those, but I remember him from a 1951 version of a film that is my favorite story of all time, and that's A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And he played Jacob Marley in a 1951 film version of Christmas Carol. So that's what I remember him from.
I'll look for that one next December.
And of course, in North by Northwest, the crop duster scene where he outruns the crop duster plane that's what makes the picture, I think, and what everybody remembers.
Like the points you were making remind me of something that's just like about how this is kind of commoner ended up being hiding underneath of the vehicle and getting their way out of this jam, and it just kind of reminded me of how a lot of these actors and probably a lot of the characters they were playing, like they might not necessarily have been born in the city, and they were raised like kind of in the country. Like Buster Keaton, for example, he's from like central Kansas, right? And so when you watch his movies, they end up in New York, but a lot of them kind of started off in Dust Bowl areas and stuff like that, or whatever.
Exactly.
And so some of these guys and some of the actors had like a lot of comfort with some more rustic elements of what they would have been filming. They weren't just like indoor cats from the city, more or less.
Right.
But so I thought that was kind of interesting that some of these actors can bring that to the table. But another thing I was thinking was that, I can't really comment on the details, and maybe you know more about it than I do, but I had heard that Turner Classic Movies was changing how they were programming from here on out, where they'd be like kind of cutting back on the amount of, or some change to the network. They might even be canceling the network. I don't exactly remember the details. But it just kind of highlights that, in my opinion, how thoroughly the Millwald, our local theater, has kind of embraced some of these older movies, and they kind of have to recognize that they have to be the stewards of some of these stories as it's getting pulled off of, like, cable TV, and like streaming services are not going to be pushing that kind of stuff, and especially with how they've been trending with the strikes and stuff like that, and trying to kind of make it a thinner gruel that they can produce more of instead of the rich writing that most of us are used to. And so our local theater and any local theater across the U.S., I mean, I think it's incumbent on them and their boards to be seriously pushing to expose and bring people to these kind of stories, so that we don't lose them to the intellectual property jail, where they're not profitable enough to be somewhere, and we just lose the story, and YouTube has a lot of them. I watched Nosferatu from 1922 a couple weeks ago on YouTube, and we've been watching Buster Keaton films on YouTube. They're all past their 100-year copyright shelf life, but even still, when they played that Buster Keaton film at on the 4th of July, it was just amazing. I mean, me and my partner left there like it with the biggest smile on our face you could have imagined. It was just this perfect little bow on top love story, and I was like, I can't believe that they're playing this stuff, and I just thought it was great that they have kind of carried the torch on making sure that these stories, I mean, it wasn't like a huge blown out crowd when you and I went and saw the film, but I think that you and I are obviously ambassadors, and hopefully we can get more people to recognize the merits of this and like what role it's going to serve to all of us as a society, right?
And I could not have said that more eloquently if I had been paid. And what a loss to Americana and the American public in general it would be to lose a resource like Turner Classic Movies altogether. I hope that some sort of refuge is in place for them, because the American people, my daughter's 9 years old, and we have TV time before we go to bed every night, and we're either watching an old movie or we're watching a Disney movie, because you can't beat those classic hand-drawn animated Disney films, or we're watching I Love Lucy, Andy Griffith. Right now it's Carol Burnett. But those things, you don't get that in TV. We don't actually have cable TV now. In our entire married life of 13 years, my wife and I have never paid for cable. We watch old movies. Yeah, we watch old movies on TV or through, we have Roku and things like that are connected through the internet. That's how we get our TV. But you can't beat any of that, and it's so important that we do what we can to hang on to that. Not to mention support local establishments like the Millwald, who have gone to such great lengths to bring it back and rejuvenate it. I mean, this is the theater that I grew up in. All my happy memories, movie memories as a child, is going to the Millwald. My sister had a birthday party there. My mother grew up in that theater, and I actually had the privilege of taking my parents. They took me to so many movies there, but I had the privilege of taking my mother to see Batman a couple of weeks before we saw North by Northwest, which is one that she actually saw in its original run at the Millwald in 1989. And she was looking at the ceiling and looking at the walls and saying, this was the same, this is the same. There used to be a bathroom over there, and she was saying how it used to be, and it was really an amazing thing just amazing thing to be there. It's been amazing having. Go right ahead.
I was going to say my experiences were not. I never went there before the renovation, and but I from the testimonies of people that I've told about going there, they said they really like that it's no longer 3 separate theaters, and that they've combined it into one big one, which I think is cool. My only criticism was the popcorn. I like the movie theater. I want it served in a 5-gallon bucket, so I don't have to keep eating it and just shovel it in when you're watching. Dodging a crop duster.
Absolutely.
That was my only criticism. Was I wish they had a larger popcorn bucket, but that's all right.
Yeah, my wife has spoiled me on the popcorn. She actually buys the kernels in the jar. We don't even buy the microwave stuff. She cooks it on the stove and cooks it in real butter and white cheddar cheese seasoning. So
that's good.
So she spoils me. I very seldom buy popcorn out, but for reasons that you just mentioned. But it has been quite amazing having this conversation with you. I hope you've enjoyed it half as much as I have. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, and I hope I will see you at some more movie screenings. And
absolutely. I will just plug, since we're on the topic of old-timey stuff.
Yep.
Maybe film. I had a radio station in the Hudson Valley, WBKR, and on Sunday nights they would do they still do it, but they would play old radio shows from the 30s and 40s,
which I absolutely love.
They're amazing. They're just super rich with extremely witty, clever stuff. And on Sunday nights, it's called Voyage into Vinyl, and he usually plays within his markets. He usually plays in the evening around starting at 6 p.m. and then he plays their old radio and then switches to old songs around 8 p.m. and they go till 10. So if you want to do that, listen to that, and you want more of that content, go on WBKR.org on Sunday nights and listen live. And it's just a riot. Some of that stuff is hilarious, and on Halloween we do spooky stuff, and obviously it's written with the same level of richness. And so maybe check that out. But anyways, I just want to thanks for having me on here. I love the discussion, and everybody get out there and see some of the older stuff. It's got a lot of Americanisms in it. A lot of stuff needed to get improved upon, and society's still working on that, obviously. But it does have a lot of core elements of what we love about America in some ways, and so it's definitely worth celebrating some of their skills. And I discovered Buster Keaton this year, and oh my God, he flatlines me. His love stories are perfect. The acting's perfect. It's amazing. The music, it's great. So just check it out.
Yep. He was Lucy's hero, and Lucy is my number one. So he was Lucy's mentor. So yeah, he's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.